Okay, good morning everyone, and you're very welcome to this webinar this morning. For people that don't know me, my name is Carl Walsh. I'm the head of the Research and Bioeconomy Division in the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. So I'm very happy to welcome you to this event this morning, where we're talking about the Bioeconomy Demonstration Initiative scheme as part of the EU Just Transition Fund. We've had good interest in the webinar this morning, so hopefully people will be joining over the next few minutes. We're using this GoToWebinar platform today, so you can see us. We can't see you, in fact, but don't worry, we will be able to see your questions, which is probably the most important thing. So as we move through the presentations, you can type your questions into the question box at any time, and we will take questions throughout the webinar, in fact, as we move through the presentations. And then at the end, we have a good bit of time allotted for that. The format for today is that I'm going to speak for a couple of minutes at the beginning, just to set the scene and give you the high-level policy context for the bioeconomy. And then Terry Connolly from the Eastern and Midlands Regional Assembly will speak for a few minutes about the EU Just Transition Fund itself and how it's being implemented in Ireland. And then after that, Patrick Barrett from my own team will go through the bread and butter of the scheme itself, and that's probably the piece that will be of particular interest to you. And as I said, we'll stop probably at different stages during Patrick's presentation to take questions if there are any, and of course we have time at the end then for more questions. So in total, I think we'll probably be here for an hour and a half. We can go longer than that if necessary, but that's kind of the running order for today. So Patrick, you should have some slides there that might kick off the overarching picture. And where this all begins with really is that 5 years ago, the government published a national policy statement for the bioeconomy.
Let me just give one second. I think Bart just has to show the screen. And there we go.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, so the policy statement for the bioeconomy published 5 years ago, and actually is still highly relevant, especially when you consider it against the Just Transition scheme that we're talking about today. So when you go into the policy statement and read the vision, it talks about harnessing our natural resources and our natural competitive advantages. And for clarity for this event, and particularly for any maybe newbies to this bioeconomy space, when we're talking about biological material and biomass, what we mean really is material that can be extracted from the natural environment, as well as purpose-grown biomass from agriculture, forestry, aquaculture, and so on. Or indeed, we are talking about biological wastes and side streams from manufacturing and processing and food waste. The vision also refers to the ambition of moving us beyond a basic, let's say, compliance and carbon mitigation focus to truly integrating the bioeconomy into the broader economic system in Ireland. So that was the policy statement. It's, as I said, it's still relevant, and I think if you then look at what's going on at the European level, the Swedish presidency of the European Union in the first half of this year placed a very large emphasis on the bioeconomy, and they secured agreement at the Agri-Fish Council of Ministers during their presidency for a set of council conclusions on the bioeconomy. So this was really important. It was the first time that this had been done in a long time, and it really puts a lot of focus, for example, on the role that the bioeconomy can play in achieving the Green Deal targets and the climate goals that we have. it also places emphasis on how the bioeconomy can reduce our use and our dependence on fossil fuels and fossil-based inputs in the agri-food system, how it can strengthen food security, and also create new economic opportunities for rural areas. Minister McConville was strongly supportive of those set of council conclusions, and they really now give us in the member states and in the Commission a strong mandate on which to build and integrate the bioeconomy into the broader bio-based system. Then moving back to our own situation, the policy statement, as I said earlier, was published in 2018, and since then we have focused a lot of our attention on a couple of key pillars. One of them relates to research and innovation and skills. Another one is developing competitiveness, also ensuring greater policy coordination and coherence in this area, and facilitating more stakeholder engagement. So just looking at the R&I piece in itself, over the last number of years, the state has probably invested over 60 million euro in research and innovation in bioeconomy, whether that's through our own funding mechanisms in DAFM, but also other agencies such as Science Foundation Ireland, the EPA, and Marine Institute and others have also been investing in this area. We've brought a lot of that together actually last year at the symposium we organised during Bioeconomy Ireland Week, and a lot of that material is up on our website. So if you haven't looked at that, it's probably very useful because it really gives a nice summary of some of the key research that has taken place. We've also seen the emergence of new partnerships and new clusters. One called out there in the slide, the Circular Bioeconomy Cluster Southwest, but there are others, and another large range of collaborative partnerships and networks, which is really great to see, and I think they'll be critically important in facilitating engagement with this scheme that we're talking about today. In terms of policy coordination then, a lot going on here. We set up structures after the publication of the policy statement in 2018 to facilitate this. So we have a bioeconomy implementation group that brings together officials from government departments and state agencies. DAFM and the Department of Environment, Climate Communications co-chair that. And if you want to read how we're getting on, our progress reports are up on our website. The second one was published last May. We also have the Bioeconomy Stakeholder Forum. That's the one that is chaired by John Malone, and they published their first report also back in May. We will soon have a new action plan, a 3-year action plan for the bioeconomy. That's going to government shortly, and it will be published thereafter. In terms of investment, so this is really an important aspect in terms of moving the bioeconomy beyond that stage, let's say that research phase, and getting it more broadly and deeply integrated into our economy. And it's something that's called out in all of those reports that I just referred to. Back in April, the government announced how it proposes to invest the 169 million euro in EU Just Transition funding for the Midlands region, and 20 million of that is being devoted to these bioeconomy demonstration initiatives, really in order to help with the costs of establishing pilot and demonstration testing facilities in the bioeconomy. So essentially we envisage supporting the establishment of 4 projects worth 5 million euro each. There'll be this call that we're running this year, but we'll run another call next year. So we hope to fund 2 projects from both calls. Patrick will go through a lot of the detail on that, so I'm not really going to go into any more on it. I just want to say before I finish that and hand over to Terry, this really is a significant moment for the development of the bioeconomy in Ireland. It's the first time that we're offering significant funding for capital and current expenditure for projects that, you know, are there in person, that people can see, that people can use to test and demonstrate many of the concepts that have been proven through the research system that we've funded over the last number of years. It also allows uniquely for consortia to come together involving research organisations, SMEs and local authorities in particular, but others can become involved as well. So that's a really unique aspect and something we're quite excited about. And it's the opportunity now for stakeholders in the Midlands to exploit the competitive advantages that exist in that area and capitalise on the research that we've invested in through the years. The financing aspect has always been a stumbling block in moving the bioeconomy onto its next phase of development in Ireland. So we're really happy that we have overcome that to some extent in this call. I think the people and the stakeholders in the Midlands territory, you have now got first mover advantage here. You can develop initiatives that will inspire and point the way for others in Ireland and across Europe in showing that there are new business opportunities and there are new economic models that can be developed for the land and agri-food sector that help us on this transition to becoming climate neutral. So it really is a huge opportunity, and I hope that there will be good interest in the call that's being run. So that's as much as I have to say to kind of set the scene. I'm going to hand over now to Terry Connolly. Terry, you're going to speak to the EU Just Transition Fund itself and to explain to people what it is and how it's being implemented in the Midlands region. So it's over to you, Terry. And just a reminder again, if people have questions as we move along, keep typing them into the question box and we'll get to them shortly.
Thanks, Carl. Hopefully everybody can see my screen and hear me. So I'm just going to, as Carl says there, that there's an awful lot of work that's been done in the background when it comes to the bioeconomy, years of alignment, and we're glad that that alignment has continued into the Just Transition programme. A little bit about ourselves. So my name is Terry Connolly. I'm Administrative Officer with the Eastern and Midland Regional Assembly. There's 3 regional assemblies in Ireland, one for the Eastern and Midlands, one for the Southern, and one for the Northern and Western regions. And of course, in a way, our counterpart would be the Northern Ireland Assembly, who look after a lot of funding in the north. So it's a type of local government structure where groups of local authorities come together to plan and implement strategies at a regional level to create more coherence at that inter-county level. So Just Transition, first of all, a question we're often asked by youth groups in particular. People tend to jump straight into the fund, but the fund is for a just transition, and that's defined as the transition to a climate neutral economy while securing the future and livelihoods of workers and their communities. Sometimes we think about climate action as being something far into the future, but the just transition has been very much happening since the 90s. So from the demolition of the Ferban power station to the cessation of peat harvesting in recent years, this has been an ongoing process. But that many of those actions are part of the closing down stage of the transition. And what we want to see with the fund is how these activities are replaced. And the reason the Midlands and the wider Midlands have been chosen for the Just Transition Fund in Ireland is because, well, the economic activity here was very much linked to ESB and Bord na Móna with the harvesting of our version of coal in Ireland, or our version of oil, which was peat. And that generated a lot of economic activity, a lot of jobs. There was money in turf, and now that that's gone, well, we need real alternatives to replace that. And that's why I find that the bioeconomy strand in the program to be very exciting, because it looks at sowing the seeds for a whole new economic activity. which is really exciting. And as Carl said, it gives the Midlands first mover advantage in this area, which is going to be of growing importance, certainly over the next 10 years, 20 years, and perhaps far into the future, as our systems become low carbon, but we still need the produce that high carbon industry produces today, and so by moving first, hopefully that's something that can truly diversify the economy of the Midlands. So that concept of the just transition, moving from the old carbon intense industry to the new carbon neutral industries, that's summed up in the single specific objective of the EU Just Transition programme, and that is the EU JTF shall contribute to the single specific objective of enabling regions and people to address the social, employment, economic and environmental impacts of the transition towards the Union's 2030 targets for energy and climate, and a climate neutral economy of the Union based on the Paris Agreement. And this is quite unusual for an EU fund to have one single objective. Normally you'll have objectives around digitization, you'll have objectives around around the green economy or cultural heritage, but to have one fund with one objective kind of highlights how focused the EU wants to be on this. So how do you take an objective like this and actually go about implementing it? Well, in reality, there was a lot of conversations throughout 2020 and 2021 with lots of different departments to try and find the best policy alignment with this single specific objective. And as a result of that, there were three priorities which developed out of that. So the first priority and the most important priority is around generating employment by diversifying the local economy. Again, that links into that employment generation aspect of the single specific objective. The second priority is around the restoration of degraded peatlands and regeneration of industrial heritage assets. That links into very much the climate action part of that single specific objective. And the third priority then is around smart and sustainable mobility options, which links into both the climate and the job creation aspects of the fund. So you can kind of see there how that overarching idea has been tailor-made or tailor-fitted for Ireland. Now the fund is being, every single European country has a region, or several regions in some cases, participating in the fund. The genesis of it was obviously around coal and those parts of Central Europe where coal was a huge driver of employment. But it equally applies to peatland, and ourselves, Finland and Latvia are very much looking at a transition away from peat through the programme on a larger scale. So to delve a little bit further into those priorities, so the first one is split up into three actions. Now the whole fund is 169 million, and pretty much half of it is going towards this first priority because it is considered the most important, and the other two priorities are expected to support it somewhat. So we're looking at, in the first action, supporting the economic diversification of the economy through the development of the regenerative tourism sector. So Fáilte Ireland are taking the lead on that. Then we have supporting the implementation of local and regional economic strategies, and we're working with Pobl on the implementation of that action. That's very much around local economic and community plans and regional enterprise plans. And then the third and most relevant for this session is to support research, development and innovation in the bioeconomy sector. And so there's, as Carl pointed out, there was 20 million towards this priority. And just to highlight the importance of the bioeconomy to the scheme, this is one of the most important actions in the most important priority. So we're really delighted that the department have made this move so fast and have gotten the call open so early, because the Just Transition Fund it's one of the last funds to be approved in terms of concept and in terms of how it went through the European Commission legislative machine, but it's one of the first that has to spend, because obviously the just transition is seen as urgent, and that spend needs to happen quickly. So we're very grateful to the department for how fast and how much work they've put in to getting this call open. The second priority is around the restoration of degraded peatlands and regeneration of industrial heritage assets, and there's 57 million towards that priority. So we'll be working closely with the National Parks and Wildlife Service. Ourselves and EMRA are working directly with them to support the restoration and rehabilitation of degraded peatlands. We're again working with another branch of the department on the carbon catchment scheme around research, knowledge transfer, and monitoring activities for farmed peat soils. And we're working also again with Fáilte Ireland on regeneration and repurposing of industrial heritage assets. So that's taking some of those old bog roads and rail lines and turning them into tourism assets. Then finally, the priority 3 around smart and sustainable mobility options. We're working with the NTA on decarbonisation of bus routes. So 2 actions around that. And in a second, I'll tell you a little more about ZEVI's installation of publicly available charge point infrastructure at community centre sites, which again, ZEVI moved very quickly, and we have a call open on that at the moment. So that call from ZEVI, if you for everybody who's watching, if you're from the Midlands and wider Midlands and from the eligible territory, just make sure your local community centre, your local library, your local healthcare hub, your local enterprise hub know about this. The closing date is 1 month from today, the 28th of September. And if the sports scheme that ZEVI have run is anything to go by, hopefully there'll be great interest in that, and we can get charging infrastructure rolled out across the Midlands. The one that Patrick's about to go into now is also open, the Bioeconomy Demonstration Initiative. So I won't go into great detail here, as you're about to hear about it all in a moment. In terms of calls opening soon, so Fáilte Ireland is opening the regenerative tourism scheme. The first part of that is the scheme around investment, the investment grant aid scheme for private and community SMEs, and that's opening this week, so as soon as tomorrow. So we're very excited about that, to have 3 calls open on the programme. It's a great milestone. And also the PUBL scheme to support the implementation of local and regional economic strategies that will be opening in September. So we're finalising some of the forms and documentation around that at the moment. I must mention the Just Transition mechanism. So the fund is one of 3 pillars. So obviously in Ireland we're very used to the grant side of things. And the Just Transition Fund is that first pillar to primarily provide grants. Now, there are 2 other pillars under the Invest EU advisory hub. I suggest you have a look at a Google of that. I'll post the link in the chat in a moment. And what's particularly interesting is that while the bioeconomy, what we're looking at here is seeding and getting the Midlands ready to economically diversify. There's going to be a point in a year or 2, maybe 3-4 years, where things start to become a scale where you need 20 million, you need 40 million, you need 100 million, and the European Investment Bank is very keen on taking good ideas forward, and that's where these other 2 pillars come from, the Invest EU and the public sector loan facility with the EIB. They're under development at the moment, but if you're thinking about really large scale in the future, it's worth just investigating that and maybe putting yourself on the investment bank's radar for future work there. And then finally, or penultimately, there's a few links here where, if you have any questions directly for us around other parts of the scheme, give us a shout at eujtf@emrad.ie. We're fairly responsive on that email. Make sure to subscribe to our mailing list at emrad.ie/JTF subscribe. Bookmark us as well, because new calls will be announced on our website. And also, the JTF's not the only fund in town. Make sure you check out eufunds.ie. There'll be other opportunities that your ideas might align with in the ERDF or in other related programs. And yeah, if I just want to take this chance as well, this is another link to post. If you're interested in the Fall to Ireland scheme, or indeed hearing from Patrick again, or from the team here, actually on the bioeconomy, we're doing an info session tomorrow as well on that, and I'll post that link also in the chat. So.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you
for
for
that.
that.
Yeah, excellent. Really, really useful to have that backdrop. And just to say, yes, there's been a few questions about whether this is being recorded. So yes, the session is being recorded, and we'll make it available afterwards. So with that, I think we'll hand over to Patrick. There are some questions coming in to do with the terms and conditions of the scheme, and I'd say some of them will be answered by Patrick as he goes through his slides. I don't see any particular questions for you at the moment, Terry, so we'll keep moving along. So Patrick, you have the floor.
Thanks very much, Carl, and good morning, everybody, and really delighted to have such a good audience here this morning. So the aim here is to go through specific elements of the call and to provide you with some more in detail outline of what we're seeking, and we very much welcome your questions as we're moving along. So at the outset, Carl has outlined that there's very strong engagement with stakeholders. There's very strong engagement across government on developing the bioeconomy, but one of the main bottlenecks has been the need for capital investment, that biorefinery equipment, as we see, that can support zero waste and cascading use of biomass and allow us to develop opportunities that align with our current agri-food system and help to address some of their challenges and provide new innovative opportunities to complement the good work that is already going on, and maybe turn some of our facilities to have more modernized outlooks. And this is to provide a whole range of bio-based products that can feed into our economy and our society, and all of that is part of this outlook in terms of climate action. So what's been identified, from globally, really, and really the pickup has been at the European Union level quite strongly, is that the bioeconomy has major untapped potential, really, to help us address climate change, both mitigation and adaptation, and really develop an innovative circular economy. And by innovative, we mean new green job opportunities, new products that have value added, because in the current system as it exists, that could be in terms of nature, or in terms of our agri-food system, or in terms of our energy system, where bio-based materials are used, the so-called bio-based industrial system, the full value of biological resources is not really unlocked to its fullest potential. And there's very significant potential to sustainably cascade the use of biomass and valorize biological waste. So that can be primary or secondary resources. And this is where all the investment in science, technology, and innovation in both Ireland and in the EU and globally has led us to this point. But there are challenges in bringing this to the industrial level. There's scientific risk in scaling up. There's financial risk in investing in new types of technologies and bringing them to a commercial and industrial level. And we need to develop the technical capacity, be it at science, engineering, in terms of businesses being able to achieve this. and then we need to scale up either practices inside the farm gate or technologies that are used at an industrial level to get us to the point where we address any of the challenges that may arise as you're going from a smaller scale to a larger scale. But we also need to develop the way we work together, because what we want to do is be able to develop value chains that deliver value back to the primary producer. They deliver for businesses, they deliver products to the market that people are willing to buy and not buy other products. And so there's a sort of a cooperative nature and a cooperation approach that's needed. And all this exists to some extent in some of the sectors in the agri-food system currently, or in the energy system, or other systems, the built environment, etc., but not in all cases. So here is an opportunity to think through something quite differently through the bioeconomy initiatives. On my slides, 1 second. So the purpose of our call is really to take the Midlands region, the Just Transition Fund territory as it's set out, to become an exemplar in advancing a competitive bioeconomy that has sustainability and a very future outlook. And to do this, we know that we need to develop very close collaboration between stakeholders who, if they were to undertake or to examine this opportunity on their own, would find it quite risky. But by working together and allowing people to be co-funded, they allow the emergence of this new outlook on the bioeconomy that we already have, but to do it in a way that addresses the many challenges that it has. And in doing so, it puts it on a very sustainable and stable footing for the future, and can deliver jobs and opportunities in a specific territorial context, such as the Just Transition Fund territory. And that means lining up, for example, local authorities, SMEs, and research performing organizations as co-lead groups. These co-lead groups can then bring in clusters, primary producers, larger bioprocessing industries, consumer brands, or other appropriate stakeholders that should be involved in projects, and align them together in a collaborative and cooperative way. And as Carla said, we haven't been really able to offer funding opportunities like this in the past. So this is quite a unique and new opportunity, and it's one for people to really grasp and get their heads around. But in doing so, this is quite a directed call, because you can see the vision for the bioeconomy is not really to work on business as usual. It's really to try and direct stakeholders to work in a way that addresses a lot of key societal challenges, but builds on a lot of scientific, technological, and innovative developments that are ripe for scaling up. So we really want to accelerate the innovation process and really bring the bio-based innovative solutions. So if you were to go and talk to your research performing organizations within Ireland or wider within the EU, and we were to bring in all the science and technology that has been developed and it is ripe for scaling up, it could be really, really informative for not only stakeholders, but very valuable for the region that has been brought in. And we really want to accelerate the market deployment of it's not only new knowledge we're looking at, but existing, mature, and innovative bio-based solutions that are there, ready, already being scaled up in different parts of Europe and are ripe to be brought into the Just Transition Fund territory. But in doing that, we want to really ensure a high level of environmental performance of these bio-based industrial systems, so not end up with some of the challenges we have today, but really address them and point the way for the future. So it's really a directed call in this sense, and it's important that the general and specific objectives are taken into account. In doing so, we want to achieve many of the guiding principles that are set out for in the national policy statement. So we want to ensure sustainability is a core principle of any submission we receive. The cascading use principle is very important. So we really want to optimize the use of biological resources, try to extract the highest added value we can achieve, aligning the potential to use biological resources for not only food and feed, for not only going into the energy system, but also into the chemicals and material system. And the best way that this can be achieved is to do it in a cascading manner to make sure that we align with the food first principle, that food and nutrition security needs are adhered to, that when we're scaling up science, technology and innovation, that we apply the precautionary principle and we really try to think through what are the consequences of what we're trying to do, and are there both positive consequences but also maybe some unintended consequences, because sometimes biological materials can already be used in the economy, and if we were to take them out and use them someplace else, will it have an influence on price? Will it have an influence on maybe that where it's currently used, having to seek new materials? So we really want people to think through what they're doing. We think also that bioeconomy and circular economies are best developed in local areas where you examine the use of materials and maybe how they can be best optimized and how people can better work together through networking or clustering or cooperation. We then also have very common ideas to scaling up science and technology, where we want to ensure research integrity. We also want to look at ethics, inclusive, fairness, equality. These are all very important requirements for when public funding is being asked for. And then we'll also be looking at the excellence, impact and quality of management for the projects that we receive. And we'll go into that in a bit more detail in a few minutes. So basically, just to outline to you, there's a couple of particular documents that we want to guide you towards, and maybe you've been looking at them already. There's a call specification document. There's a specific call guideline for applicants. There's also a specific document that helps you navigate through the department's online application system. And all these details can be found in our very recent press release highlighting the call was opening. So Carl, you can interrupt me if there's particular questions you want to bring in at any moment, but if not, I will roll on to maybe
keep going, Patrick. Yeah.
So just in terms of the scope, like what really are we asking for in the Bioeconomy Demonstration Initiatives? One of the main things is around this potential to either develop facilities to become biorefineries where you can cascade the use of biological resources. This can involve single technologies or multiple of technologies, and the idea is the potential to produce value-added products. There's a lot of bioactive properties within biological resources. These materials can be used for both chemicals into the material system, such as housing, or into the food and feed system, or even into the energy system when we can cascade the use of materials. That's the kind of lead focus. The importance is around the feedstock that can be produced to produce those materials. They should be respecting the local ecological limits. They should be protecting and enhancing biodiversity, and they should come from the type of supply chain that allows actors to work together, that allows distribution of value, and considering the distance they should travel, because that will all fit into the economic model. Again, it comes back to the point that I made about the importance of the climate and environmental performance. And we really want to, accelerate this innovation process, capitalize on the scientific and technology developments. And that's why, it's the opportunity for the SMEs, the local authorities, to work with the research performing organizations that either have this mature knowledge or are developing new knowledge in this area. But we really want to support activities where this all becomes something that contributes to local and territorial economies. So that's the broad picture. More specifically, what we're really looking for in terms of the bioeconomy and our policy development is really concrete and demonstration examples of bio-based innovation and solutions in the Just Transition Fund territory on the ground that are developing cooperation action approaches and are aligning an outlook on better management of nature and the natural biological resources, the alignment with primary production systems where there's opportunities to be developed for primary producers in alignment with what they already do, or maybe some diversification opportunities, and developing this type of value chain approach. And then looking at the business models. So we can mobilize bioresources, we can valorize either primary or secondary resources, we can create new bio-based products, maybe that's alongside the agri-food systems as it stands, and all that is viewed as being offering the opportunity to offer new economic and employment opportunities whilst protecting and enhancing the environment and climate. So really looking for those win-win situations, and that's why the call is quite directed. There's very specific requirements that you'll see in the call that we ask you to take into account: the materials that are fed in, the processing of the materials, the products that are produced. But we also, as Terry has outlined, the opportunity to link in with the finance system to demonstrate the sustainability opportunities and to communicate that to the stakeholders within the region, and to really be an exemplar then for the rest of the island of Ireland and beyond into Europe and globally about how you, if you specifically direct the development of the bioeconomy, it can achieve many of the strategic objectives that are very important at the moment. So going into a little bit more detail, and I know if there's any particular questions that come up, I'll be interrupted as we go along. So for the call that's open now for 2023, the call has one funding instrument, and it's aligned with addressing innovation, and it's aligned with something that's called the technology readiness level scale. I'll go into this in a little bit more detail with an infographic in a second. But for anybody who understands that currently, this is going beyond research and really is about scaling up innovation to the point where it is as close to being commercial as possible, so that we have really de-risked some of the challenges that are faced by either researchers who are sitting on knowledge and want to scale up the opportunity, or business operators who can see the financial and strategic challenge in scaling up this knowledge. And this funding is to bridge that gap between these type of stakeholders with the leads of local authorities who can help address things like, if you want to put in place facilities, that it's done in the right manner, that it aligns with the local and regional needs, that it's in line with planning, it's in line with any environmental needs that need to be addressed, that it thinks about the involvement of local economic actors, SMEs, large industries, that they're all aligned, and that they can play this kind of bridging role. So we really want to scale up and demonstrate technologies, maybe produce first of a kind product facilities. So projects have the potential to be up to the value of 5 million euros. And this is both for operational and capital expenditure. So through our bioeconomy forum, our stakeholders told us that one of the biggest gaps is capital expenditure. How can we pay for the type of equipment and facilities that are needed to bridge this gap? But then how do we get funding to also run them for a number of years? So again, 5 million euro is being set as a funding limit. It's not a target as such. Like, value for money in the proposals that come in are viewed as important, but we thought, based on the evidence of what we've seen through bioeconomy funding opportunities in Europe, this upper limit is viewed as very important for spending on the amount of capital that might be required and the type of operational funding that might be required to put in place the type of people with capacity, capability and expertise, and really align different actors. So in that, what we're trying to attract really is a public-private funding approach. So by the government investing this type of funding through aligned with the EU co-funding opportunity, that we crowd in both public and private actors, so that we're really building very strong foundations, that the project is only something that is starting off. It's really just addressing a hurdle to get to the point where we have a very stable bioeconomy activity that is stimulated by the funding opportunities here, and that's going to boost the uptake of innovation, lead to market deployment, but leave a very stable activity that goes beyond the project. We're looking to spend money quite quickly, because this is one of the stipulations of the Just Transition Fund, is that there is a need to spend money by 2026. So we're really looking for projects that are, are really thinking about what type of planning, what type of permissions that they may need to receive, that they're as soon as possible maybe able to put out tenders for capital investments, and that really they have this focus that the whole activity should remain in situ post the project duration, because it has been allowed to crowd in partners who give it great stability. I can see the strategic direction that's been pointed to, maybe can even bring in cash or different types of in-kind contributions or relation investments, that really this is just a crowding in activity for something that's going to be much bigger and much better beyond the funding period. This is what I meant by the TRL levels. As Carol has pointed out, the government in Ireland and across various departments and agencies has spent quite a lot of money investing in research and innovation. So there's a lot of capacity and capability of people working with industry in Ireland already through those projects. And what we want to offer is the opportunity to look at scaling up and demonstration of technologies through different types of facilities, maybe even potentially leading to first of a kind product facilities, and that this is really bridging the gap to commercialization. So really around some of the details that we'll be looking around, the funding rate can be 100% for not-for-profits. Because we have to match up to state aid rules, and the state aid rules that are particular for us are the framework for state aid for research, development and innovation. There are two types of I suppose innovation: industrial research or experimental development, that this call is particularly guided by. So there are specific funding rates depending on whether it's at industrial research or experimental development for small, medium and large industry, and how they can be funded. And we can go into the specifics one-to-one with people if they want to go into more detail on that, because they are quite detailed. And it's really unavoidable when you're trying to put together funding calls that you need to match up these rules. It's essential for the participants that they know that the people who are putting the call in place, such as ourselves, have thought this through and have discussed this with relevant experts as we have done, and then that we can help you to pick through the particular funding rates that are applicable for the consortium that you may be putting together. We will be looking to examine proposals across what are well-known award criteria around the areas of excellence, scientific excellence, impact. What is it really doing in the territorial context, in the Just Transition Fund territory, and then the quality of the implementation program that you put together. In particular, we have requirements around the scoring thresholds for excellence at a minimum of 3 out of 5, a minimum of 3 out of 5 for implementation. And in terms of impact, we will be scoring the impact with an additional factor of 1.5. So the better you score there, the more it can be multiplied up to really impact the final result. The online application form is through the DAFM Flexi Grant system, and there's a particular guidance available to basically walk you through step by step how to do this. And I had a look at it myself when we were putting up the documents last week, and it is really quite intuitive and helpful. So again, who can apply? What's really important for us is that we are really looking for co-lead activities by, in particular, the people who are sitting on the knowledge that is either mature or is emerging, the research performing organizations, in a line with co-leads, the SMEs and local authorities, because we think the SMEs are quite agile and able to bring through research and innovation. The local authorities, they have a very overarching view of the particular territorial context and can really support research organizations and SMEs to really bring through the science, technology and innovation. And this is viewed as very important. Proposals can be supported by the active funding involvement of local actors. This can be from pilot lines through to demonstration sites or really living lab activities. And this can involve a whole range of different non-profit legal entities. So it allows really the piecing together. Proposals can involve the active fund involvement and cooperation with bio-based industries. and this is there's particular rules that apply for say large industries in particular. So we would really like to go through the details with people who are interested in bringing these partners in, to help you understand the specifics, which are largely applied by state aid rules, or the common provisions regulation, or even the Just Transition Fund regulation, so that we have to match up to those rules. We also really want to see deep participation by large industry, and they can come in, they're welcome to come in on a self-financing basis. This can be through strategic participation, really like the time and effort of the staff of the large industry who are really trying to guide a project to be of something that can be of value for this type of industry, or even contribution in terms of cash or in-kind contributions that can be in terms of samples, equipment, materials, or even other types of additional investments that their engagement in this project could lead to use of piloting and demonstration facilities to lead to maybe development of commercial biorefineries. And again, just to consider for applicants, they really have to consider the being in compliance with the national IP protocol, and there's a specific well-worn routes in terms of term sheets and agreements that are required, but that's more after funding has been approved and you're in a grant agreement process, and that's more detailed. We can go into specifically one-to-one with people if needed. So please refer to the call specification document. It's kind of really important to kind of set out that the calls and the topics we'll go into in a bit more detail in a minute, but we're really setting a direction in these call documents about different specifications, different requirements. So even though one of the fatal errors that a lot of people can make is they often try to apply their idea and shoehorn it into what is being asked overall. So really it's to reflect in it in a different way. Look at what's been asked and then see if this is of interest of what you were considering, and see if you're willing to take the direction that's been set here to achieve both your goals but also the broader goals that the funding is trying to achieve, because it's really the matchup of the two that's going to be really valuable. So
okay, Patrick, we might, we'll pause there now for a second, give you a chance to take a breath, and we'll go through some questions that have come in, and a couple of them have already been answered, but I'm not sure that everybody might actually see the answers on their screens. So I can summarize those quite quickly. So there was a question as to whether there's an expectation that there would be 2 €5 million projects for this. And if not, is there a minimum expected project value? There isn't a minimum expected project value. The maximum is set at 5 million. We hope that by us giving an indication that there would be up to 2 projects worth 5 million each, that we're saying that we are seeking, you know, projects of relatively significant scale here. So we're not, you know, expecting to see very small local, you know, micro projects. That's not the nature of this call. There are other, let's say, calls and funding instruments for those type of things. Where, you know, to create and establish testing and demonstration projects of this scale, to establish testing and demonstration biorefineries. The experience from across Europe is that funding of up to 5 million is required to do that, and that's why we pitched it at that level. Can EU and non-EU partners join a consortium, or is it Irish only? So Patrick has clarified that yes, EU and international partners can participate in the consortium, but Patrick, they wouldn't be eligible for funding, would they?
The partners, it's quite open, Carl, because it's an EU co-fund. There is we can't close off on the partners that can be funded, so it's open. So if people are bringing in knowledge and technologies to apply them, the one stipulation that's really critical is that the activity has to happen in the Just Transition Fund territory.
Yeah.
But that's
yeah.
the really biggest stipulation.
No, that's a black and white issue. I suppose the reality is that our expectation is that the majority of the funding in these projects will be capital. So by default, it would probably be the Irish partners on the project, and that would be drawing down that funding. 5 million is a sizable project, sizable budget for 2 projects. Could the 5 million be utilised for smaller projects? So I think we've dealt with that. Is 3 years reasonable given the planning challenges at the moment? Yeah, I mean, I think we probably recognise that we have a very tight timeline on this, and that's not of our choosing. It's the rules that come with the EU Just Transition Fund. So we have no say in that. They are set for us through the fund. Not all projects will require planning and licensing, so people will have to work through that aspect when they're developing the consortia. What is the earliest start date that can be assigned to proposals based on review? What is the earliest start date that can be assigned to proposals? Did we stipulate that in the call guidelines, Patrick?
Well, the outline that we've given is that the submissions will be received by the 13th of October, and we will start the review process and aim to complete that by the end of the year. So we would foresee that we would be into a contract negotiation period maybe late in Q4 and early in Q1 2024. So we would hope to have finalized grant agreements in that Q1 period. So the start date could be, late Q1, early Q2. So that's just really the speed of how we turn this around once we receive the proposals about closing date.
Okay. The question about whether the regions beyond the Midlands are covered, they're not. This is very specific to the territory of the Just Transition Fund. Just to say that there will be another call that we're running under the Shared Island Fund for bioeconomy demonstration activities. That's going to be a north-south collaboration, so that will come later this year, and that will cover regions beyond the Midlands. Can SMEs participate or apply who are not in the specific outlined regional areas? Well, they certainly can't apply. Can they participate, Patrick?
Yes, well, like if an SME has, for example, a technology or a practice or a product that they're looking to develop, they can participate. The thing that they have to think about is that the activity has to take place in the Just Transition Fund territory. So there's nothing stopping them, but it's just that the actual, say, product development or facility development or operational activity is expected to be in the Just Transition Fund territory. But that's not to say they can't make use of that. It's something that they just have to consider that expectation in this call or requirement.
Yeah. Then there are a couple of questions relating to SME funding. How do we determine the funding rate for SMEs? Can you provide a ballpark range of funding rate for SMEs and multinationals or MNCs? Are you coming to that, or do you want to take that now?
Yeah. So the funding rates are set out in Annex 2 of the Stage 8 guidelines. So for industrial research, for a small enterprise, it's at 80%. For a a medium enterprise it's at 70%, and for a large enterprise it's at a lower rate. And then for the if it's experimental development, it starts at 60% for a small enterprise, moving down to 50% for a medium enterprise, and 40% for a large enterprise. So there's quite detailed differences, and there's a need to kind of examine the industrial research outlook, which is, I suppose, more like an activity that takes place in a pilot facility, or if it's in experimental development, it's like where you take science and technology and innovation and equipment, and it's taking place in a commercial setting, sort of that first of a kind product development setting. So I suppose the challenge, Carl, and we have known this when we were developing this call, is that these rules are quite they're quite detailed, and there's also definitions there in terms of industrial research and experimental development. And I think we need to work through this with stakeholders so that everybody's very clear when they're making their application which headings they're coming in under, and it interrelates with the size of the company and where the activity is taking place, and whether it's a more open and public pilot and demonstration facility or activity, or whether it's say a first of a product type commercial facility, and there's differences there. And obviously the more it gets close to commerciality, the less the state is able to invest into the funding for the different types of enterprises, because a lot of the risks are being removed, and it's more a commercial no-brainer than if it's further back down the TRL level. So very happy to work with stakeholders, sort of more one-to-one relation to their project proposals based on this.
Sure, and I mean, we mightn't get to all these questions today, or we might indeed have answers to some questions immediately, because there could indeed be aspects that we haven't fleshed out ourselves in the documents. So what we will do is take all the questions today and put them into an FAQ document that we will publish on our website by the end of the week. So you can also refer back to that. Okay, we might take one or two more and then go back to the presentation. So can some of the projects be commercialized without additional government incentives that might be available in other EU territories? I'm not sure, Patrick, now about that question. Is it clear? We might have to ask the person to clarify what they mean by that.
Yeah, I need more clarity.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. So the person that asked that question, if you want to expand on it, that would be helpful to us. Can we identify a list of university contacts who are working in this space? It would save each project proposer having to engage with each college on a speculative basis.
Absolutely, we can help people with that. I mean, there's already very well identified groups. For example, Carl, you would have highlighted at the start there's a nationally funded Bioeconomy Research Centre that covers, I think, almost all the universities. But I mean, there are also others who are outside of that, and we're more than willing to help signpost people and introduce people as needed.
Yeah, okay. And that symposium that we had during Bioeconomy Week last year, the material from that would give you a good flavour of the researchers involved. Exactly.
Like that's one snapshot of who the people are, and there are others. Yeah, but we can.
So we'll look to do something on that along with the FAQ document to help people. Then some specific questions maybe about costings. Are the full costs of capital covered, or only a depreciation period? Most accountancy practices use an 8-year depreciation period for capital, which makes the effective funding rate quite low.
Yes, well, a lot of this is out of our hands, but it does relate to the point on depreciation. This is standard from Horizon Europe funding right through to co-funds or national funding. So yeah, it's like it is a challenge, but that we have to abide by the rules of these funding opportunities, and it's related to the depreciation costs. Yeah.
Is there a limit in terms of euro amounts under state aid rules of how much funding can be provided to one SME?
I know that this question interrelates with de minimis rules, which has a funding amount. I think of maybe up to 200,000 that can be applied, that SMEs can apply for over a 3-year period. But this is different to that. It's separate to that. So there's not the same limits as with de minimis.
Okay, that's fine, Patrick. I think we will stop at that and go back to your presentation. And as I said, we will put these questions. We'll compile them into an FAQ document and put up answers to them as best we can anyway, and post that to our website by the end of the week. So, Patrick, back to you.
Thanks, Carl. So, just a little bit more in-depth detail now about the two particular topics that are offered in the 2023 call for proposals. So if I was to summarize the two topics, I would say that one of them is working forward from agriculture and forestry based, I suppose land based biological resources, both primary and secondary resources. And the other one is working back from waste that is bio-based and is within the system and can be either a clean stream or a mixed stream, and where it can be valorized and used to produce higher value opportunities either by processing or co-processing. And that's a very high level overview. But if we went into the specific details of the one that's working forward from our land system and the agriculture or forestry based value chain opportunity, we're pointing out that based on what is happening from science and technology and innovation, it is recognized now by both stakeholders and experts that there's an opportunity for optimization by introducing processing technologies. In cases there can be complementary technologies and multiple technologies applied, and if they're applied to both primary resources, like this could be grass or it could be algae, for example, or could be forestry based materials, or if residual materials from their mobilization or processing, that these materials could be upcycled for higher value applications. And that the opportunity is for maybe different industries to work together. So it doesn't just have to be one sector, it can be cross-sectoral, and that there's an opportunity to optimize the value from all these streams of materials. And the opportunity arises maybe to look at their mobilization, to look at how they can be most efficiently managed and valorized. And that opportunity, as we said, has a budget of up to 5 million euros. It's at that TRL level of 6, 7, and 8. And really what we're looking for is the potential to look at a competitive sort of bio-based business model involving industry, involving the agri and forestry based sector, stakeholders that can reach back, including to the primary producers, working together to look at these new product opportunities, to look at how, if the circularity of materials is looked at within the regional context, if the resource is used as efficiently as possible via practical applications, because it has been shown to a certain scaling up level that this makes sense, that we can have as much value out of the biomass as possible. Again, as we said, within the ecological and limits of the local environment, but also matching up to the environmental credentials, and really to benchmark this and to look at the opportunity. And really in this context, there's the opportunity to make use of existing new or industrial assets, so that could be modernization of facilities that are in place by the addition of pilot lines or testing facilities, or development of innovation hubs or test beds, or engaging with technology centers that can bring through innovation quickly, or developing of demonstration sites or living labs, or pilot engagement with different stakeholders. So this is quite an open opportunity to really think of what bioeconomy development can become in your local or regional area, really taking into account the businesses, the interests of the local authorities, the crowding in of science and technology innovation, as we said, not only from the local research producing organizations, but the wider Irish community, EU community, etc. And that this can be all brought together in a manner that really optimizes the opportunity and integrates people working together across the system. And this is quite, I suppose, innovative and quite, I suppose, groundbreaking in some sense, in that there often could be many barriers for different agri-food sectors to work together. But now this offers an opportunity for a rethink. But really, it's only a priming of the system, and we expect that this priming opportunity could lead to a much bigger opportunity being developed over time, because it makes a lot of commercial sense to manage these resources, not only for an economic opportunity, but also to better operate within the local environmental constraints, and really not just consider the constraints, but really develop a sustainable economic model for the different industries. So that's one particular opportunity. The next one, as I had said, was really working back from the bio-waste system back to how we know that very broadly that it is viewed that annual waste generation is projected to really increase, and that the overall consumption of materials, be it biological or other materials that are within the economy, fossil fuels, metals, minerals, this is all really expected to really increase over the next 40 years. So this waste system needs to really evolve to not only be better managed, but also to kind of maybe cut down on the consumption of the whole system. And that will really happen because there's challenges to producing all these materials, but they can be better recirculated and better reused within the local economies, and making the local economies a source of materials that is of real interest to not only indigenous businesses within Ireland, but also more global businesses who will really be looking to develop based on local renewable raw materials that are recirculated, because this will be a very important aspect for these companies to be viable in the future. And this is an opportunity for Ireland to really think strategically about how you make resource available for industry, and the recirculation, and really you're cutting down on the wastes of systems. So we really want to look at opportunities around increased processing shares of bio wastes, or waste from bio-based products and processes. So one, we could already have waste, or two, we need to look at how we better capture waste from products and processes as they currently stand, and really prioritize their use within the waste hierarchy. So an important aspect of this will be think of how can we prevent waste from happening in its first instance, and then if we do have unavoidable waste, how can we better manage that material? So there's an aspect there of really addressing not only narrowing of the waste that's produced in the first instance, but if waste is unavoidable, to making more value out of it. And this is really a new departure for the waste system, and this one is looking specifically at the biological side of that. So really expanding that opportunity for valorization of unavoidable bio waste at all stages, because that can happen at many parts of the value chain or the model, both industrially, but moving back into inside the farm or the forest gate, and that may mean a different way of working together. But really also across all the projects that may be funded, really making the public aware of the activities and accepting of these new ways of innovating and the new solutions that are being provided, because the public will play an important role in accepting the types of facilities that might be needed in the future. And you really need to work with the public to make sure that these facilities are placed in places that are considered appropriate, and that they work very well, because sometimes there's new types of traffic that may be involved, so or there's new types of alignment with different types of facilities. So there could be clustering of new energy facilities with new biorefining facilities with new waste facilities, and really this needs to be thought through strategically. So this is where, you know, different types of local actors working together can really aid this. So it's really looking at this kind of multi-actor approach where maybe actors such as researchers, local authorities, bio-based feedstock providers, waste managers, local bio-based processing industries really strategically think about this type of development, and you move away from the type of outlook that may exist to a degree today, where you take a material, you produce a product and you produce a waste, to really trying to, I suppose, design the system that it's looking at zero waste and cascading use of materials. You're designing out waste as such, you're producing higher value, but all that is for not just an environmental and climate outlook, but there's also an economic outlook for the local community or the regional community, but also has that social impact in that it's going to create new green jobs. It's going to create new types of products that are of value to the local and regional area, and maybe can be something that can input into bio-based products that are of value for transforming the local agri-food sector or the wider agri-food sector in Ireland, or products such as chemicals and materials or food or feeding stuff that can be for export. So there's really a lot of thought and opportunity that can go into there. Again, around the budgets are the same, the TRL levels are around the same. So just to kind of go into the details, a bit of the sort of the nuts and bolts of the dates that are quite important. Carl referenced that this all kicked off in April. DAFM had with our colleagues in EMRA and other supporters helped us run an information event in person in Portlaoise on the 4th of July. Did 2 sessions that day. We opened our call, as you know, on the 16th of August. Information webinar today. We will have a deadline for technical queries on the 29th of September. And we ask you to contact, this is a generic email address, but I can tell you that, like myself and my colleagues, will receive the questions on the day about any queries you would have. We're open to arranging one-to-one meetings. We'll offer our sessions to anybody who's willing to come individually or as a consortium to meet us to go through your queries. Obviously, we will be producing the FAQ. The proposal submission deadline is the 13th of October. The timing is important there. It's 12 p.m. Noon. Please note that if you come in, you press your submission button after that time, there's nothing we can do about it. The call deadline are strictly adhered to. That's for all the calls that DAFM run by our research division. There's no exceptions made here, and we ask you just to really adhere to this. You can be making your proposal on an ongoing basis into the online application system, so you don't have to all do it in the last week. You can be adding in your details as you're going along, updating it regularly, saving it. It will be there online for you. And I think that would be a good practice advice for me, is to often and regularly be working on your proposal. We will be assessing the proposals over the period as we set out here, Q4, and then we will be looking at these Q1 dates in 2024 to get the notifications and the grant award activities completed, and the contract negotiations are an important part of the process, because there's often feedback from the expert evaluation panel. I'll go into the process just with you now. So come the 13th of October at noon, when we receive the proposals, in the following week, or ultimately a week or 2 weeks, we'll be undertaking the preliminary assessment, and that's undertaken by the DAFM research staff. That's really just, have you met up to the strict adherence to the submission requirements? There's no outlook on what you actually proposed. Did you meet up to the call rules as per the section 6 of the call specification? We will be putting together an expert evaluation panel, and this is really outside of meeting up to the call rules, which is important, a very critical element where we will categorize whatever we receive into different thematic areas. We will appoint expert evaluation panels matching up to these thematic areas, and these panels will cover a broad church, but will include specific expertise for the call topic area, and will cover a broad range of people from overseas, which is important given that expert outlook, from normally from academia or from industry, and we cover the public service in Ireland. So you really give the proposals that you receive a good filtering and a strong review by expertise, and then proposals are put forward come forward with scoring and recommendations for funding, but it's finally reviewed by a high-level review panel who assess the list of recommended projects and then make final selection. And there's obviously limits there in terms of the overall budget, so there will be prioritization of what's put forward for funding, and then ultimately that's signed off then through the hierarchy in DAFM and by the minister. And we've quite detailed criteria for the assessment of the proposals, and this was something that was reviewed by the Project Management Committee for the EU Just Transition Fund, and they agreed that it was a suitable set of criteria, and that's provided in the call guidelines for applicants. So really take a close look at this information when you're making your submission, to see what you're being scored against. So we need to see details in the applications, so that it's really made very straightforward for the people who are undertaking the expert evaluation, that that what you were asked to provide in the proposal, you have really clearly demonstrated that you are undertaking this in the proposal received, and that makes it much easier to achieve the marks that you're seeking to get, to be through to the recommended list of projects, and to ultimately have the opportunity to be funded. So some key information: make yourself familiar with the online research system. We're really clear on the closing date, that's the 13th of October. You need to be an eligible applicant, so it needs to be the co-lead partners can be the research producing organizations, the SMEs, and the local authorities. They're deliberately set out because they are groups, either they have knowledge, the SMEs are very agile applicants to bring forward science, technology, and innovation, and also the local authorities have that overarching, overseeing, wide view of how you can support science, technology, and innovation, and companies move from ideation to commerciality, and they have a very important role. So if you have an incomplete application, you've just done part of it online, or you're late, you cannot submit it. So you have to complete all the application form to be offered the opportunity to press the submit button. If your application is late, you cannot submit it, and there's no change to that. That's just, we're saying it now, and there will be no change. Again, you can update and save your proposal as many times as you want along the time period where the application opportunity is open, but not after the deadline has expired. So work regularly and save your application regularly. All submitted applications, depending on your organization, must be signed off by the appropriate person. So, for example, you know, for the research producing organizations, they have certain systems that, you know, is well known through their particular offices that needs to be signed off. So, and for other eligible applicants, it's the same. The hierarchy of your organizations or the appropriate sign-off people need to be aware that you're involved in this, and they need to be signed off on your work. You know, appropriate financial people are encouraged to join as collaborators in the project preparation, so they're really scrutinizing the finance that's been applied for, and that they're in agreement that that's appropriate for the organization. So really, you know, if you're getting involved in this, make sure that it really, the strategic people within your organization are well aware of it, and that they are in full agreement, and that they are supporting you in making your application. There's particular elements of the call spec and the call guideline for applicants that'll support you in being able to address the specific parts of the application form. So really read these in details, like, so what the funding can be applied for in specific details within, for example, the guideline for applicants is a real, and that's set out for both the research producing organizations, the SMEs, etc., in quite deep detail, and that's all matched up to the relevant state aid rules. So it should be no surprise for anybody who's been involved in applying for any type of funding before. Again, they're the dates, I don't need to reiterate them, but you know, sometimes it's just easy to see it in a visual. And really, Carl, we can take some questions and answers now. I have some other slides that go into more detail on the selection criteria. If the questions come up, we can go back to that if needed.
Okay, thanks, Patrick. No, we don't have that many more questions in, so people, if you have questions, now is the time to put them into the question box, so that they're taken before we finish this up. I mean, Patrick did say that he and Matthew are available to talk to people about aspects of the scheme. I mean, obviously, because we're running the call, there's only so much we can do in terms of guiding you. We can't get too involved because we have to remain impartial. But we will do our best to guide you and to answer any questions that you have. And the FAQ document we post later this week, we will look then to update that on a weekly basis. So as more questions come in over the coming weeks, and unless they're very, very specific, we'll look to include that or update that document on a weekly basis. So a couple of small questions then, perhaps. And Terry, maybe this one is for you. It's a very specific question as to whether Ballivor in County Meath is in the Just Transition Fund area.
No, unfortunately, it's not. I'll post there in the answer the areas that are, but generally it's the three Midlands counties, 2 municipal districts in Tipperary, 2 in Kildare, East Galway, and all of Roscommon. But look, as Patrick said earlier, the key element here is that you know, any projects need to benefit the territory. So even if your organization is located outside, as long as you can demonstrate how you're benefiting the territory, there's still eligibility. It could still be eligible. But if the project itself is in Ballivor, then that would be probably too far outside the territory.
Yeah. Okay. Could there be a list of local authority contacts published working in this space? similar to what we will try to do for the research and academic side. Leave that one with us. We'll see if we can work something on that for you. So just please leave that one with us. And
probably a good stopgap measure there is most councils have an economic development section, so they will generally be the port of call on this. But yeah,
okay.
we'll put together a list for you, Carl, for circulation.
Yeah, that would be useful. Yeah. Let's see. Do you need planning permission at application stage? No, I don't think so.
No. Like what we have said is we recognize that there may be planning or other development steps that may be needed to be undertaken, and that I think what we would want to see is that there's a reasonable understanding in your project proposal of what may be needed to be undertaken, and to give a reasonable outline of the planning timeline that may be
if at all, if required at all.
And basically from our stakeholder forum, Carl, like it was often raised initially that planning may be an issue, but ultimately what we found out by speaking to many stakeholders is that planning hasn't turned out to be an issue. So once your application was made for the types of facilities we're referring to, once they met up to the requirements of the planning within the local authority, is that these planning applications have passed through the system quite reasonably. So it's not viewed as a challenge as it sometimes is set out.
Yeah. So now a couple of questions that are about eligibility, I guess. We'll take a few of them together maybe. Are co-ops considered not-for-profit, and are farmers primary producers? Are they SMEs, or how would they be categorized?
Primary producers are not SMEs. They're more like I'm just don't have the term in my head, but more like loan operators. So but they are economic actors, and they are for profit. So
sole traders, I think.
Yes, sole traders. That's the word.
Yeah.
And there was another grouping mentioned there.
Co-ops, are co-ops considered not for profit?
Yeah, well, I'd actually have to look into that to know exactly what it sets out as a legal entity. But once we understand that they're either a profit or a not for profit, that has to be determined for me, and we will answer that in the FAQ.
Yeah, that's fine. There's a question about whether is a business case needed, but honestly, I think we'd need to better understand what you mean by that.
We do, just to say, in the application form, Carl, there is an ask around this, and it's probably proportional to the TRL level that's being requested, and whether it's an industrial research application or an experimental development. So it really is dependent on what's being proposed.
There's another question then about whether it's possible to have a partnership notice board, and I know there was a question earlier about whether we can facilitate some sort of consortium dating. So leave that one with us as well, if you don't mind. We'll talk to our colleagues in IMRA and see if it would be possible. Well, I mean, a good starting point would be to put up the contact details for the researchers and the local authorities. But a partnership notice board isn't a bad idea. So please leave that one with us, and we'll see if we can do something on that. Obviously, fairly quickly, given the deadline for submissions in October. Let me see, what else do we have here now?
There's just one there, Carl. It relates to a person that works for Irish Cement, and
yes.
it just raises an interesting point, because they are broadly interested, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here a little bit, just reading the long question, about bio-waste materials that could be processed into high quality fuel. And it probably allows us just to reiterate the point around cascading use. So this funding opportunity, whilst energy or fuels could be a bio-based product at the end of a cascade, ultimately the focus is on food, feed, chemicals, materials that are of higher value. And then if there's still a residual material that could be processed into a fuel or a waste for this zero waste outlook, that needs to be considered. So, and this is part of the directionality, because oftentimes with bio-based materials, if there's just a waste material, we just put them into the fuel or energy system. So thanks for that question, because it allows us to come back to a very important point of the direction we're trying to set. It's not out of scope, but it's only in scope if it considers cascading use.
And just to highlight there, because this isn't the department being difficult or anything. The actual legislation that lays out the Just Transition Fund specifically doesn't allow funding of just, you know, waste to fuel. Sorry, not waste to fuel. It's the burning of waste is pretty much it, because it's seen as such a low value part of the circular economy. So the interesting part of that question is is turning it into a higher value fuel. So if that processing can be demonstrated to be a higher value part of the chain, then you know it maybe takes you out of that grey area of just burning waste.
Okay, thanks, Terry. Right, well, look, that seems to be all. I mean, if anybody has any final questions, you would need to put them in now in the next minute or two, because otherwise we will conclude the session. And all of these questions we've received today, we'll get a transcript of, so we'll look to put them into that FAQ document, as I said, and put it up on our website. And if possible, we might be able to alert you to the fact that has been uploaded to the website. I think we'll have that facility from the GoToWebinar. So I want to thank everybody sincerely for tuning in today, and I think most of you stayed on for the full session, so really appreciate that. There's a lot of interest in this call. We've been getting really good feedback, so we are excited and encouraged by the discussions that are taking place, and are really looking forward to seeing the applications that come in. If you need to talk to us or reach out to us at that email address of research@agriculture.gov.ie, that's the one to send your email to, and we'll try to get back to you as soon as we can. Okay, thanks to all the panel. Thanks, Patrick, especially for the presentation, and Terry, I really appreciate it, and hope you all have a good rest of your day.